Hi, I'm Bryan with Pioneer Builders. Welcome to this episode of the Pioneer Builders podcast. In this episode, you're going to get to watch or listen to actually a screen recording that I took from a Zoom meeting that I had with Nanad over at UpCodes. What is UpCodes? It's basically a technology company that's really focused on building codes. So what's really interesting is they've given me access, basically full access to their website. So now I can see all of these building codes. And I had no idea that there were that many. With the free version, if you just use their website, you can see a lot of good information, but it is not near as powerful as what you can end up using. I don't want that to sound like an ad, but I'll tell you what, if you're a professional architect or whatever the case might be on a very professional technical level, UpCodes is definitely something you should think about checking out. Now, if you're watching this video, right behind me, you can see this Titanic Lego set. I think at least for a while in my background, I'm going to have different Lego sets that my family has done, and they have done a lot of them. My brother, Tim Euler at Awesome Framers, he did Legos growing up. I did Legos growing up, but I tell you, they have changed tremendously throughout the years. So the one behind me is actually the Titanic. It was stinking expensive. My wife bought it. I wish that the plan would have worked where they took some time to do it, but they blasted through that thing over winter break like you wouldn't believe. It actually is 3 different sort of sets that gets put together. So anyway, check out the podcast online. Visually, honestly, it's probably best to watch this one visibly. But if you're listening to it, don't just hang up. Hopefully you're able to learn something out of it. But again, this was a screen recording of a Zoom meeting, so it is audio and video. Let's get right into it, and then we'll do a little outro.
So we have the option to download it and then edit it as needed. Yeah, so that was my background. I'm still licensed in the state of New York, and I do a couple of projects on the side, on my free time. But I really like working here at UpCodes. I work with all of our enterprise customers across the US. So I onboard them, train them, here as a resource for them anytime throughout their subscription. A lot of firms like to reach out to me when they want to establish best standards for them, best practices about using UpCodes. A couple of firms have reached out to me when they want to roll out UpCodes in all new projects, like using the code calculator, using projects as a tool. Code research is kind of strange because, especially in larger corporate firms, because some of them are structured, some of them are not, and it's almost like a wild west. Like everyone does their own thing. It's not, you may have Excel files and you may have some documentation, but at the end of the day, it's mostly what a project architect feels or what a technical director may want to do. So that's my role here essentially. I love it. I get to work with architects, designers, building departments, GCs, owners, things like people across the spectrum, which is really cool to see how people use UpCodes, the kind of projects they work on. And generally everyone loves UpCodes, which is great. Because it's a really useful tool. People are really thankful for what we do here at UpCodes. And it's useful at the end of the day. It's super intuitive to use, very useful, cuts down a lot of time on what people would be doing otherwise. So, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I wish I could figure out when I first started using it.
Mm-hmm.
But we're over here in Washington State, and to be able to have the amended code show up is so helpful instead of just working from the model code or something like that.
Absolutely. And our library is growing. We have, of course, all of the states available. We're working with, we're trying to upload more and more jurisdictions, local jurisdictions onto the platform. The data, as you can imagine, is immense, right? There's a huge, just a lot of content out there that needs to be processed and uploaded. So our team has a process by which they figure out what jurisdiction is going to be hosted. We take a lot of user requests. people I work with, companies I work with, they can send in the request directly to us. And then I think there's some way in which our content team processes that and then assigns a priority for a jurisdiction before uploading it onto UpCodes. But yeah, the aim is to have, I wouldn't want to overpromise and say every jurisdiction because that would be crazy, but a bulk of large jurisdictions and then some local jurisdictions where projects are happening.
Yeah, I would imagine you almost have to start with the highest density locations that have the most usage, and then you kind of go out from there.
Yeah. And another popular request is zoning. We do offer zoning text only for New York City, but that's another animal altogether. I think Scott, our CEO, when I joined the company, I had a question about that because I worked in zoning on the East Coast as well as the West Coast, and it's a beast. It's like every county, every city does their own thing, and it's a different solution altogether compared to building codes. The thing with building codes is that the base foundation is sort of similar across jurisdictions, so you can use that to build something on top of. But with zoning codes, it's very different based on the city, based on the jurisdiction. So it's very hard to do.
Yeah, I never thought of that. I'm involved in developing a plat right now, and it's a whole nother ball of wax. But at least if you've got the international building codes, as you say, there's a foundation to work from there.
Right.
Probably couldn't have done it in the past, but now things have become much more uniform.
Right. Have you had a chance to hop in and use the platform? I saw you using it a little bit. What has your experience been?
Originally, it was I'm trying to remember, just the basic code here in Washington State. So I think it's in black font, most of the code language. And then if there is more of a local amendment, then it is blue, so you can really see what the difference is. There was a brief time period where I can't remember if I paid for the subscription or if it was just the free trial. And it might have been just to get at some of the code commentary, if I remember right. But in any case, that's the primary thing that I've used it for. And then once I got everything kind of opened up to me, I can't remember what I was trying to find in there. But I saw that there was a lot more codes that were available, which was nice. I noticed there wasn't I think Washington State is under the Uniform Plumbing Code, but that wasn't on there, I don't think. Did I miss it, or is there a reason why it's not?
It's strange. I actually onboarded a company that's based in Redmond this morning, and they have the exact same question.
Yes.
It is on there. So we have the 2021 Uniform Plumbing Code for the state and the 2018 version. If you go under Washington and just search for plumbing, it's available on there.
So which code years? Well, let me just do this.
Yeah, I can share my screen.
Okay, I see plumbing code. Oh, I see it. I wonder why I couldn't find it. Obviously, yeah.
Yeah, you can search plumbing, but you can also search, of course, it doesn't have the International Plumbing Code, but it has a UPC. So you can search for UPC and it shows up there.
Yep.
Yeah, but what makes UpCodes different is the fact that in addition to all of the codes that we do offer, we just offer a ton of other resources and tools that you can't find typically in any other platform or solution. Search being one of them, projects being one of them, like the ability to create projects and invite collaborators in there, create archive projects or templates of projects, create team projects. When you're working in large firm with 300, 400 people, you can actually create team projects, invite collaborators on them, and then lock them. And then the nice thing is when you want to duplicate them, you can actually duplicate them, change the jurisdiction, change the code here. So this is great for firms that do work across jurisdictions. Let's say you have a specific client, let's say Safeway, or large any sort of large corporate client that does multiple buildings in different jurisdictions. You can set up a base template and then just copy that over based on the jurisdiction. You can copy over any of the bookmarks and comments that you've made. It sort of transfers it over to the new jurisdiction and the code here. Diagrams is one of the most used features in UpCodes. this is all content we develop in-house. We have technical experts on staff, and we also work with subject matter experts, consultants, fire consultants, accessibility consultants, and then tons of topics, right? So there's accessibility, there's the building code, there's electrical, there's envelope. But yeah, this is one of the most used features, and for good reason. But in my experience as an architect, the code language can be confusing and hard to decipher. And so what we do is we basically take that language, make it really easy to digest, easy to understand, with a lens, taking into account how a designer would view it, or even building departments. Like we've had building departments who said they've used some of our diagrams and illustrations to talk to plan applicants about why their designs are not compliant. Architects have said they use these diagrams to talk to building departments about plan check comments. So really, it's a really useful tool, and our library is just growing. We have, I think, around 1,400 diagrams right now. They are all curated to be jurisdiction specific, based on amendments that have been made in that particular jurisdiction. And then, of course, you can filter them down by specific topic. We also have acoustic assemblies. So these are basically assemblies from the Gypsum Association GA handbook, just layering on all of the information from the assembly, making it easy to read. And then, of course, there's a design data that is, STC ratings, fire ratings, sound tests are all part of that original listing, along with the file number. And then there's smaller features that we build in there, things like, hyperlinking code sections that use the same diagram. So as an architect, while I'm reviewing this, I know right away, I should probably just review these sections to make sure that they're either applicable or not applicable to my project. I can go there, check out that code section, and then see if it's applicable to my project. So just smaller tools like these, which are really useful, which is why I really liked UpCodes when I used it at HOK. But yeah, that's diagrams. And then you can also bookmark and save code sections to your project. So you can imagine, right, if someone's working on a hospital or like a multifamily residential building, there's tons of code sections you probably want to bookmark. You can actually view them under your project here. So if you go up here, open up your project, these are all of your saved bookmarks, which you can then add comments on. You can add a test comment here, test comment. You can also tag any collaborators in the project. So this particular email address is a collaborator on this project. I can type an @off and add in a comment there. And then one feature that I really like is when you're on this view, you can't actually view the contents of the code, but you can actually go to a expanded bookmark code sections view, where if you expand the code section, you actually have the contents of the code right there. So you don't have to keep hopping back to the book and coming back to this view. You have all of the content right there. Which is, I think it makes your life a little more efficient. And then, of course, there's hyperlinks to going back to the code book. So you just click on there and you can be brought back here. Yeah, and then there's smaller tools in there. There's hyperlinks to any code sections that are being used, definitions that are being used in the code section, hyperlinks to code books or other code sections that are referenced in the code text here. The ability to print code sections, you can do that. I mean, previously I would take a screenshot or just copy paste it. I don't need to do that anymore. I can copy the link. Every chapter, section, subsection has its own unique URL. So you can actually just copy a link, copy to your clipboard, you can paste it, or you can share it with someone and they'll be able to view it. Then there's the ability, of course, within projects, you have a code calculator, which essentially checks for compliance under these 4 categories. I'm going to pull up in just really quickly a project that I already filled in, so it's a little easier to view. But the way it works is you provided inputs, your design criteria, your square footages, your names, your occupancies, square footage. It calculates occupant for you based on occupant load factors. You can add as many stories as you want, the number of floors. You can repeat floors if it's like a extrusion. You can add horizontal building separations along with sprinkler systems. The more data you layer on, the more precise the code calculator summary is. And then we also build in like smaller tools in there. So for example, if it's a large firm, you're working across the board, junior architects, senior architects. If you're working with someone who doesn't know what type of construction is, or you're trying to figure out, hey, the owner has asked me to figure out what a cheaper or why this particular type of construction doesn't work. We have something called a construction type guide, where you can actually modify the parameters of your design, and it lets you know what type of construction is compliant or not compliant based on the inputs that you provided. So this would previously be a manual process. You would have to do these calculations yourself, but we sort of try and automate it and make it a little easier for you to use. So I don't know. I really like that tool. When I was at HOK, it was super useful for me. And then once you actually run the summary, you answer a lot of questions, of course, based on egress, fire rating, and plumbing, but it checks for compliance. So if it's a non-compliant condition, it'll flag it to you. If it's compliant, it will say it is compliant, or it won't have a red flag on it. And the most common question is, hey, how do I know this is precise? We actually provide a step-by-step breakdown of the calculations with any tables, sections, anything that's been referenced in the calculation, those are hyperlinked there as well. So you can actually go and check the information for yourself. And then at the end of the page, it'll actually show you why it's not compliant, and it'll give you a reason for that. We'll also include like other footnotes for code sections that you need to be aware of, and things like that, which make it a little easier for you to pull in other references as you're doing your checks. We do things like, it checks for building height and feet, building height and stories, occupant loads, exits per space, exit travel distance, corridor lengths, corridor widths, fire rating. So the intent is that we build it to be robust enough to do all the calculations for you. But at the end of the day, we do recommend that professionals go and check the numbers, make sure that it's all applicable to your project. The professionals are the ones who are stamping and sealing the drawings, not us. So this should be used as a tool. We always preface my training sessions by saying that. And then, of course, there's plumbing calculations as well. We also allow folks to download this code sheet either as a PDF or an Excel file, so they can paste it directly on their Revit sheets or their drawing sheets to submit for permit. So it makes that process a little easier as well. And we actually recently launched a BIM tool, so you can actually upload a CSV, like an area schedule from Revit. You can upload it onto UpCodes directly. It'll fill in the information instead of having to do it manually. You also have some CSV example files available on UpCodes, so you can download those and see what it looks like. What else? We have assemblies. So these are UL assemblies. We have over 12,000 assemblies listed on here. And with assemblies and products, which is a thing that we just launched, it's all tied into search. So if you actually search for a specific, let's say, fire-rated pathways, search can cut across building codes, assemblies, as well as products. So it can pull up building products that are on our website. It can also pull up code sections and UL assemblies that contain that specific term in it. But UL assemblies, if you click on it, you'll be able to view the illustrations that are part of the original UL listing, along with all the design data that is essentially digitized. So it's exactly what you would find if you download the original UL listing. It's just digitized. What digitizing does is it gives access to search. So search can actually find a particular assembly if you use any of the terms within this particular listing, because it's all and so that's what makes search, which is a feature that most people use in UpCodes, that much more powerful, because it can cut across the product surface area across these different things we are building here at UpCodes. Any questions for me? By the way, feel free to interrupt me while I talk. I don't mind at all.
The only question that I have specifically right now is for the diagrams. Are those pulled from any resource, or did you guys actually, 3D model all of that?
It's all 3D modeled. Yeah.
Huh. So that's
We
an in-house thing, or
yeah.
that's
Yeah, we
pretty
have
cool.
our team here is really interesting. We of course have, the software guys, our engineering team, and that part of the company. But there's also a part of the company with people like me, people who have actually worked in the industry. Our lead technical expert was worked at the Santa Clara County for I think 15 or 20 years. He's a licensed architect and structural engineer. And then we have additional people who work like in the architecture industry or in the building department industry, and also uh, subject matter experts we hire outside of UpCodes. So it's a big team that actually puts this together. There's a lot of checks that go into it before a diagram is uploaded, and we make it really easy for people to actually contact us and say, hey, we think this diagram should be modified. There's a spelling error here. Make sure that this diagram is actually applicable to this section. We actually do
Hmm.
that in the app itself. So there's tools that you can
Oh,
use.
cool.
And then most importantly, we actually have live chat. So it's not a chat bot. It's a customer service specialist who's in Chicago, available most working hours for the country. And she gets back to you like within a couple of minutes
Hmm.
after she gets a response from our team. We are coordinating on the back end, like we are all on Slack, messaging each other.
Sure.
So if there's a mistake, it's sort of like a all hands on deck. Everyone tries to fix it as soon as possible,
Hmm.
and we try and release fixes like either the same day or within a couple of hours, or within the next day or two. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah. It's a lean
You're
team.
in St. Louis, you said?
I'm in St. Louis. Yeah, we are a remote team, so everyone
That's what I
works.
was going to ask. It seems like you guys are all over the place.
Yeah, yeah, we are fully remote from the East Coast to the West Coast. Also, a few international people. But it's a very lean team, but extremely efficient, I would say. And
Yeah.
everyone is a superstar. Like everyone works really hard. I've never worked in a tech company before. This is my first time working in a tech company, and it's been such an amazing experience.
Hmm.
It's because of the way it's structured, and the way you own your product, right? Like you own what you do. You're given the resources you need to get your job done, and you just do the best. You do the best you can do. So that's what makes people like even more invested in the product. I think in architecture that's not the case, or that may not necessarily be the case. You always have someone looking over your shoulder, making sure you're doing your work. But here it's like you own your own work, which is really amazing.
Hmm. Cool.
Yeah. Um, yeah, and Copilot, of course, feel free to try Copilot. It's our AI tool that is trained specifically on the content that we host. So it becomes a construction chatbot, construction code chatbot.
Mhm.
Um, Again, it's a chatbot. It's not going to be 100% precise. But we do ask you to select jurisdiction and a code here, just because that sort of narrows down the funnel at the top. And you can also select things like your sources or your building type, multifamily, single family, things like that. And then when you ask it a question, it will generate a response based on the construction codes that it is trained on. I was actually a little surprised last week. Our engineering team told me that anytime a jurisdiction issued a bulletin or errata or a modification to the codes, and that has been updated on our platform, Copilot actually has access to that right away. So if you're asking the question, you know that it's trained on the latest information that's available, which is really cool because you don't have to worry about things being out of date. Um, but yeah, so when it generates a response, it also pulls in any code sections that can be referenced, that either are referenced directly in the response or that you should probably reference while you're reviewing the response. And most people that use Copilot have told me they really like this because in a lot of cases, it actually pulls in code sections that they were not aware of or that they didn't know they should review. And then again, we make it really easy to document and save this information. So you can actually bookmark a code section to a project, or a Copilot response to a project, and also a code section that has been referenced to a particular project. So you can do that and it just saves to your project. It's intended to be conversational. So for example, I've asked the question about wood studs. I can just say, what about um, studs?
Mm-hmm.
And it sort of gets the context in which the question has been asked, and it regenerates the response. We don't think it's ever going to replace architects, code consultants. That's not the intent here. I don't think that it will. It shouldn't, rather, just because architects at the end of the day are the ones who are stamping and sealing the drawings, or engineers. So you definitely want to do your own research. But what this really does is it takes away that first 10 minutes or 15 minutes of research that you would spend, doing it yourself with books or by disturbing someone else. At least in a big firm, you use up other resources to get the answer. So this is how you can sort of cut down on that time and be able to get a response really quickly. And it also pulls in any assemblies, diagrams, illustrations that are part of that response as well. And then we are building in the ability to bookmark these to projects, save them to projects, just so it's all tied into one. So if you go to your project's homepage, you pull it up, you'll have your diagrams, your bookmarks, your assemblies, your products, all of them saved to one project. And then what you can do with that info is you can essentially duplicate a project anytime, if you're working in another jurisdiction, for example. And what it does is it will copy over anything you choose. So you can copy bookmarks, comments, and collaborators, and then the design data and the code calculator, and hit duplicate. And if it's not able to, right, so it looks like there's an issue. But if it's not able to copy over everything, then it will let you know, okay, these code sections were not able to be copied over. And so it saves the code sections, but you know that everything was not transferable, and then you can do a manual review yourself. But again, great to set up templates, QA/QC checklists, guides. So if you want to create a project as an accessibility, in my projects, I have code studies built in. So you can do code studies, you can do certain standards, accessibility standards, for example, energy guidelines, things like that, and save it as a project and make it available to external consultants, your own team members, and such. So overall, we're trying to consolidate all of your code research into one place, and then we're building on it. So we initially had the codes, then we released Copilot, of course, but then we released assemblies, which are assemblies required per code, or rather required to be, you need to be compliant with that UL listing. And then you have products which are listed in the UL assemblies, which are now showing up in products here. So this is building products, manufacturers, content. We partner with them. We will have their content hosted on our website. So if you open up a particular product, you'll have things like, manufacturer name, the model number, CSI division, and of course, things like catalog brochures, installation instructions, warranties, and then for design firms, BIM models, which historically has been a really hard thing to do, to find the right BIM model for the right product. And this library will grow. Right now, it's just, I believe it's around 10,000 products. The plan is to grow to millions. I mean, you can imagine how many products you can list on here. But that's the plan, to just bring in everything we can and make it really easy to find something. So while you have your subscription, feel free to scroll to that too if you have any questions, or if you have any recommendations, suggestions, that would be really helpful for us as well.
Do you have anything to do with ASTM on the website, or?
So we, if you go all the way up here to adoptions by publisher and then scroll down to ASTM, let me just look. So it looks like it's either, if it's a grayed out on UpCodes, it means that it's not available, but it's either on the roadmap or, there's some backend work going on about publications. But since we only host jurisdictional content, we don't host base documents. It would have to be adopted by a jurisdiction for it to be available on UpCodes.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Because I know there's some things that are referenced like to an ASTM standard within the code.
Yeah.
And it would be nice to be able to click. I think what comes to mind is like there's certain types of flashings that they reference an ASTM standard. It would be nice to be able to click on that and then have the problem up with what's compliant with that standard.
Yeah.
that the code is referencing.
Yeah, and again, going back to the firm that asked me the question this morning, they asked about ISO standards. It was an engineering firm, but there are certain ISO standards that are listed in the code as well. So they were like, can you host ISO, or can you at least host a link in there that will take us to the site where we can get that information? But yeah, if that particular document has not been adopted into law by a jurisdiction, we don't host it.
Do you have some kind of a program or algorithm that searches for jurisdictional documents on the internet, or is it more like case by case? You have human beings trying to find this stuff.
Yeah, we have a content team that does that.
Huh.
They track over 500 AHJ websites. And so they are, it's a decently sized team, I would say, pretty big. And they, anytime there's any shift or there are any changes that are upcoming, they are aware of it. And so by the time the effective dates come around, typically you would see those updates already rolled into the books that you have on UpCodes. What we do for our users is if you go to a jurisdiction's page, you can actually scroll down all the way and you can see something called adoption info, which is basically where we track what amendments, what publications, what been rolled out by a jurisdiction. And then if you see it in this list, it means that it's been rolled into the books that you see up here. And the other thing we also do is we provide links to original documents in case you want to verify the information yourself.
That's cool.
Access to the original documentation. So you're not spending time Googling it, you're not calling someone up, you're trying to, have the link right here and you can see the information for yourself.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I know in Washington, every code cycle, there's a problem with their energy code getting adopted. And, this is kind of cool to be able to have as a singular location.
Right.
To be able to find that original documentation.
Right.
Cool.
Yeah. That's all I had. I mean, I just wanted to give you an overview of the product. Feel free to jump in and try it out, test it out, see how you like it.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time to do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very cool.
Do you have any?
No, I think that's all I have for now.
Okay.
I just have to process and then, find real world applications for when I need to do this. But I think I'm also just going to poke around and see what I can learn. I'm especially intrigued by the product's location.
Yeah. And we would love your feedback on it as you start getting into it. I know you're very in the field, you're building stuff, so no one better to give us feedback on this than you.
Cool.
So send that across. Happy to hop on another call with you as well if you want to do this with a team member of mine, the person who actually builds these tools online. We could do that as well.
Awesome. Well, thanks for taking the time.
Absolutely. It was great meeting you, and sorry about the shuffling of the meetings, but I think I'm glad it worked out at the end.
Me too. And how do you pronounce your name?
Ninad.
Ninad. Okay, yes. Got it. And how about your last name?
Garware.
I gotta pull up my email here with it.
Garware.
Very good. Well, if you think of anything else, let me know too. And if I can get my hands on the recording, I'll see if I can share it somehow.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Have a good day.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
And that brings us to a conclusion of that particular video. I've actually been able to use UpCodes since then. If you listened, you might have noticed that I couldn't find the UPC or the Uniform Plumbing Code. But subsequent to this, that recording, I went ahead, got on there, and took a look at something that's been called out by one jurisdiction, but it's never been called out by another one. And again, I am a builder here in Washington State. So what the deal is in the International Residential Code, here's a little code study for you. Footing drains are only required in certain conditions. One of those that they're not required in the IRC is around crawl spaces, which is most of what we actually build. However, in the Uniform Plumbing Code, they are required around crawl spaces. So what I ended up doing is I took both of these sections, I submitted a question to the local AHJ to ask, Basically, is there something I'm missing? What am I supposed to be doing here? And the answer came back, when there's two conflicting codes, you go with the one that is stricter. So one of the lessons here, do your own code research. Do not take what I'm saying and go, well, now we have to have footing drains around all of our crawl spaces. Do your own research. If you're an architect, it is your stamp, it is your seal. You bear the responsibility. That was one of the things too. If we're using the AI with UpCodes, yes, it can help us to generate answers. UpCodes can help to generate really nice reports. But fundamentally, it's kind of the blending of hardware and wetware. I don't know if you know that term, but wetware is our brains. We have to use discernment, wisdom, insight, thinking ability. But if we can augment that with this technology, it really does make us a much more, dare I say, powerful worker. It can save us just so much time. But ultimately, we bear responsibility for the things that we build, the things that we design. Well, thank you so much for watching. Periodically, you might see that I'll do like a story or maybe an Instagram reel featuring UpCodes. I try to make my content pretty relevant. Sometimes I do things for products. That's just the fact. That's just the way it is. But generally speaking, I like to show what I'm actually working on. So occasionally you'll see me do something with UpCodes. I've got a couple of other podcasts online here. The first one had to actually do with like buried utilities. I did one that got into kind of a deep dive on employment taxes. Maybe payroll taxes is actually the better term there. And I've already got lined up for my first guest. I'm not going to count Nanad as my very first guest. It was kind of an ad hoc thing. But anyway, give me a follow over on Instagram as well. Stories, I get a little bit more relaxed. Reels, sometimes it's industrial athlete in action, and I pick some song that maybe I like as a soundtrack. Sometimes they're just job site walkthroughs. And then, of course, you might see the shirt here, Build. I am on the Build Show Network, and twice a month I publish content. One announcement here that I'll let you know is I will be at the Build Right conference in Portland, Oregon. And I don't have the dates off the top of my head, but if you follow me on social media, I'm sure you'll see me promoting that a little bit. The end of this month, International Builder Show. And then in, I think Build Right is in April. And then in March is actually the Journal of Light Construction. It's JLC Live, and that's going to be in Providence, Rhode Island. So anyway, thank you so much for listening. If you watch this, thank you so much for watching. And we will see you next time on the Pioneer Builders Podcast.